Ladies and gentlemen of the court, we're about to get started. Let me bang my gavel in. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for this Modern Teamwork and Collaboration Conference. Oh, maybe should bring my volume down a little bit. Probably doesn't help that I'm already loud. I'm gonna have to.
You're not loud. You project. It's a good thing. Thank you.
I did like 10 years of acting, so they made me keep doing that. A little bit better, hopefully. I'll try not to project so much. And I'm
Yeah, you might just scoot.
Let me just
Scooch
scooch
to it.
up. Okay.
Nope.
Or not.
There you
And
go.
Play a little further.
We'll help you find your mark.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and get started. So welcome. So my co-host, Matt Bailey, he's actually sick, really sick. He came in last night, he dropped in a bunch of stuff. He was like, really, he looked pretty bad. So I was like, today, just stay home, get well, and hopefully he'll be back around and kicking it really soon. But he can't join us today. But I'm here. My name's Nakia Carter. I work for Microsoft. I'm the Worldwide Modern Workplace Tech Strategy Lead at Microsoft. So I want to thank our sponsors. Of course, Microsoft is a big sponsor, but we have other sponsors as well, like AvePoint, who will be giving us our lovely after conference event social, which I know is too long of a word. Normally we use the word SharePoint or SharePoint conferences, but yeah, this isn't a SharePoint conference and I forgot to ask for names. So next year we'll have a good catchy name for this thing, but right now it's just the after event, the after party. We also have Logitech, anytime, everywhere, anywhere 365, audio codes. We have great prize sponsors. So we have AdBot and A-Press, and we also have, AdBot. So Lisa Ruff over here is going to be giving away some awesome prizes. We have some great prizes that came in from A-Press. We are going to have the partner community. IAMCP will also present a little bit and give away a Surface, and the Collaboration 365 will also give away a, I forget what the pass is too. We also have Witham and Busy Light. And thanks so much also to our additional sponsor, who is Cloud Revolution. So Adam, I know it's like, okay. Adam has helped us out tremendously during this conference, putting everything together as well. So big thank you there. Don't forget to send out, fill out your bingo card. So you got to go visit the sponsors, go say hi, go say thank you, see what they have to offer. Don't forget to put your name on your bingo card. A lot of people do that. They forget to put their name there. I'm going to keep on rolling if your name isn't on there. Make sure you also get it dotted. Please write legibly. Will be hard for me to actually say who won the prize if I can't read what your name is. And you must be present to win. So no sneaking out the back door and hoping that you still win, because you're not going to. Just saying. Thanks to all of our fantastic speakers. These guys came out here on their own dimes. Thank you so much for contributing your talent and your knowledge and your own money to get here and speak for us. These speakers are great. You're going to learn a lot. There is going to be a QR code like this for submitting feedback. So in every deck you should see, when every speaker presents, you should see that QR code. Just scan it real quick, submit some feedback. Speakers would like to know how they're doing so they can improve. And we'll also have one at the end for the general conference overall so we can improve. And there is a contest for tweeting. So the one with the most tweets wins. Just use modern TCC, and it should be at the end, at the bottom, see at the bottom right here, of most of the slides. And Microsoft Teams hashtags. And the one with the most tweets will win a prize. This evening event is going to be at the Barking Dog. Now, I know most of you that are used to coming to these types of conferences, you might be like, why aren't we going to Clyde's? Yeah, they're like, why aren't we going to Clyde's? There was some, I don't know what was going on with that. So I had to move on. Okay, so we're going to the Barking Dog. It's like a mile and a half from here, so it's relatively close. And that's where we'll be. We'll look at that again this evening. You have to get a band from the Ave Point table in order to get in. Okay, but it'll be 6:30 to 9:30. All right, so we're going to start with the learning. And we're going to start off with Karuana, who probably needs no introduction, and I'm sure she's going to introduce herself. So take it away, Karuana.
Okay, I will. Can I have the clicker? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to swap out my presentation here. Give me one moment.
I want the story behind this.
Not,
Sammy's little cabin.
yeah. Oh, that. Yes, that is my. That's why I work, so I can go there. Hello, everyone. So I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Karuana Gatimu. I work in Microsoft Teams Engineering. I'm the worldwide lead for adoption, certification, and training. I'm going to try to find a place to stand that isn't annoying. Okay, and I'll come down there too. I'll wave to everybody down there. We're going to want to get some energy up in this room this morning. We're going to have some fun today. You're going to have a very great learning experience. And I'm here to really kind of set the context. What I do every day working in Microsoft Teams Engineering is help build a product that is the hub for teamwork in Office 365. How many are already using Microsoft Teams? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. How many of you have it on your mobile device? Okay, that's a good thing. So for those of you who haven't joined us there yet, that's okay. It's a process. And I'm going to talk with you about how to think about that a little bit. And even if you're already in Teams, it's an iterative journey getting the most out of that product. And it's not just about Teams. It's about all of Microsoft 365. So we want to talk about that. That's a little bit about me. I worked in corporate IT at Microsoft, running Skype at Microsoft and our SharePoint migration to the cloud and a whole bunch of stuff there. I've been a customer, I've worked at partners, and now I work inside product engineering. So kind of have that 360 view. I try to always remember what it was like to be a customer of Microsoft and how difficult it was to find things and get an answer when I needed it. So I try to do my best to move that forward. You can always find me out on Twitter and on LinkedIn. That's the best place to stay connected to the work that's happening in my part of the engineering group. I always like to start my presentations with the resources first, because by the time we get to the end, you're going to completely forget about this. So you can take a picture of this slide, but this has the core 4 sites that you should know if you're working in this space. The M365 roadmap site, which has been redone to include more information. So that there's that roadmap site, and that site not only lets you know what's coming, but when something has started to roll out. For those of you who know, when we start rolling out a new feature, it can take 24 hours to 2 weeks. It just depends upon how complicated it is. And so we have things that are rolling out. They're in process, and you can find information out about that on that main site. Our Microsoft technical community. How many of you have logged into the Microsoft technical community before? Okay, a few of you, that's great. This is a place that has blogs and forums about every Microsoft product. And especially if you're new to this space, it's a wonderful place to learn and ask your questions. I run the Driving Adoption forum and blog that's out there, and you can come out there and ask all sorts of questions about how to do business scenarios or how to get your folks to use the technology or what have you. But there's forums out there about everything. And it's a great place to become involved when you're maybe not at a great conference like this. Docs.microsoft.com is all of our technical admin guidance, and I have a show on YouTube called Coffee in the Cloud, and that is for champions and IT pros. It's a lot of how-to and why-to information about all of Microsoft 365. It does do a lot around Teams. We talk about Planner and SharePoint and Yammer and other things as well across the space. So please go and check that out. That's also where we host our technical training for IT pros, for our IT Pro Academy. And you can find the Developer Academy from there as well. So those are the things that you're going to need to know. And if you want to hang out with us, our fun group of people, every month on the phone in our community call, you can sign up and become a champion. And a champion is somebody who's accountable for driving the growth or usage of Office 365 in their organization. And you may be technical, you may not be technical, it doesn't matter, everyone is welcome. I like to say we have also accidental developers there, who you end up being a developer because you're trying to get something done. And we try to have content on a bunch of different topics across the Office 365 suite each month. We record those calls and you can go and download them and the presentations and everything. So please join us for that. All right. If you've ever seen me speak before, you know that I always start with this slide. This slide is extremely important because most Microsoft folks will get enamored by the new feature that we're rolling out at any given time. And I love new features. I think features are cool, but features aren't the point. The technology is not the point. It is the people we are trying to enable with that technology that truly matter. We have to make sure that we don't get so enamored with the technology that we forget what we're asking people to do. We're asking people to make a complete change, especially if we're going to onboard them to the cloud or to Microsoft Teams. It's a completely different way of working than they have before. And if you think about it, most organizations haven't invested in their employee technical literacy in a while. Since the advent of Outlook, basically, was, and maybe you did some SharePoint training when you moved it to the cloud, but there was never that much. And so if you go to roll out Microsoft Teams or you're trying to do more modern collaboration work like you're going to learn about here today, your employees are going to be like, wait a minute, why do I want to do this? Why am I taking my time out to figure this out? So we have to make that case to them. We have to tell them what is in it for them. We call it the WIFM. It's a very important piece of the work that you do. You have to have technical acumen and the stuff needs to work, but you also need to help them understand why they're investing with you to make a change to something that in their mind, they may feel works just fine. I answer that question every day. I like my email, why should I move to Teams, right? And I have an answer for that, by the way, which I will get to shortly. Of course I do, right? Otherwise they wouldn't trot me out and send me places to talk about it. But at the end of the day, the most important thing I do with customers is listen to them. Listen to them about their business, listen to them about what they're trying to accomplish, and find out what it is they really need before I go, tell them about my technology. Let's go back here a second. Clicked too fast. There we go. The thing to remember is what employees really want from you, okay? They may or may not want new technology, but they definitely want to feel like they're in a safe and inclusive environment. They want to have a sense of purpose. People who are engaged in their work and they feel like they're doing meaningful work are by nature more productive. And you also create a sense of purpose in your organization and reduce the costs that you have for talent engagement, talent acquisition, and talent retention. They want to make sure that the teamwork tools that they're using work for all the generations that are in the workplace. Microsoft has a great slide that talks about the 5 generations that are in the workplace together now, and that makes it different than what we've dealt with before. The last thing is that they want to make sure that they have accountability and they want dependability in their environment, but they want to know that their work is going to be honored no matter whether they're a super visible person like me or not. Sometimes in this business, we don't reward the introvert leaders as much as we do people who are extroverted like myself. And that's something that this technology, Microsoft Teams in particular, can aid with, right? So remember that what your employees really want isn't always about money. It's definitely about recognition, reward, simplicity, and they want a frictionless experience. They don't want the technology to get in the way of what they're trying to do. There's nothing more frustrating than when, you're just trying to get something done, your boss asks you for something, and for some reason you can't log in or something doesn't work. And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen with Microsoft technology. We certainly strive for it to not happen. But that's the goal, is to have this frictionless experience that people can simply feel productive about. And the reason that this is important is because of what this thing here, it's called a change curve. For anybody who's ever studied psychology or organizational change, you'll be very familiar with this. No matter what kind of change a human is going through, they go through this process, right? Maybe you get a new job, or maybe something traumatic happens in your life. The first thing you do is you deny that you have to deal with it. Then you have resistance towards that change. And if you're lucky, if all of us in this room have done our jobs, that resistance will melt and people will start to explore. the result of that change. Your job, if you are working in this business right now, is to create curiosity, to create interest, to create desire in those employees, to find out what it is that you're offering with Microsoft technology. And then and only then will people commit to going on the change journey with you, right? So humans are humans are humans. Whatever region you work in, whatever state you work in, whatever language you're working in, people are always the same. And in some very fundamental ways. It's hardwired. There's a lot of neuroscience that goes into this, right? So it's not optional. This is how we deal with change. So people will always resist you trying to bring them something new. So again, it goes back to making sure that you're landing for them why it matters, the with them. One of the things I tell folks a lot too is to make sure that you're tying the rollout of Microsoft technology, whether you're moving SharePoint to the cloud, turning on OneDrive, or deploying Microsoft Teams, tie it to your overarching company initiatives. What does your company need to do? Are you launching a new product? Do you need to manage a cost? Are you trying to get new talent? These things have to connect together, right? Just saying, hey, Teams is available, that's not a launch plan. That's cute. I like it when people do that, but it's not actually a launch plan, right? And it's not something that's going to create any sort of connection or curiosity in your employee base, right? How many of you consider yourself, or how many of you are IT pros in this room? You do IT for a living? Okay, how many of you are business folks doing change, training, any of that other stuff? Developers, can I have any developers out here? A couple, okay, great, excellent. Each and every one of you, whatever role you're playing in an organization, can contribute to what this messaging looks like. So don't think that just because you're a developer or just because you're not core IT, that you don't have to do this. And if you are core IT, like myself, it's really important that you learn how to talk to business differently. Your job is to make sure that you take your stakeholders and leaders through this change curve, because sometimes they are your biggest blocker. Right? Sometimes they'll be like, okay, sure, you can turn that on for everyone else, but I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, right? And that won't be helpful to you if you're trying to really drive change in the organization. Folks, have you seen this slide before? A couple times, maybe? All right, well, I'm going to go through just briefly. We call it the inner outer loop slide. Only at Microsoft do we come up with names for our slides. I am a good Microsoft employee, so I have lots of slideware. And what we tried to do with this was really help explain where our products in the collaboration space operate best. One of the things I want to make sure you walk away with today, this morning, is it's not just about Teams. It's Teams and. You'll see if you end up following me on Twitter or anything I write, you see I do a lot of #BetterTogether. Right? And that's because Teams is better with the rest of Office 365. It's better with SharePoint, it's better with OneDrive, it's better with Planner, it's better with all the other third-party apps that are available inside the product. It's just better that way. And that's, and only then are when you're creating a hub for teamwork, right? And so bringing all those things together is what actually works. So we're not trying to displace email, for instance. That's not our goal. Our goal is to take out of your email those quick little conversations about, hey, did you update that deck? Hey, are you coming to the meeting? You know, hey, here's the new information for the team. You know, here's an open ticket. We're having an incident right now. Those are the things that we're trying to take out of your email, and we want to do that because it creates more transparency for the team as a whole. Think about it for a second. If you have a new person come on your team and all you've been doing is communicating an email, how are they going to see any of that information? They can't. You're going to sit there and you're going to forward a bunch of reports and emails to them, and they're not, and maybe they'll get it, maybe you'll not miss one or what have you. That's the stuff we're trying to take out of email. I will tell you that my email is much more focused and useful now that 99.9% of the work I do is centered in Teams. Now, of course, I can do that because I'm the owner of my portfolio of work. So I can tell everyone, this is where we will collaborate. We will do this here. We will not fork it all over the universe, right? We will have a center of gravity for the work that we do. Now, that is the inner loop. So most of the work I do in Teams is with people that I know, at least sort of. We're working on the same outcome, and we're trying to get something done together. The outer loop is still the domain of Yammer. So before I joined Microsoft Teams Engineering, I was in IT, And I was the one accountable for rolling out Microsoft Teams to all of our employees. And so that was a preview 3 some odd years ago now. Seems like a longer time. But in Redmond, there's this thing called the time dilation field. Like it's like kind of like dog years. Everything like speeds up there. But when we launched Teams inside of Microsoft for our own employees, I launched it with a Yammer community. That Yammer community provided me a public place to answer questions and provide support on this new product. It's still alive today. And at the time, there were more people in that Yammer community than a Microsoft team could accommodate. Now, of course, we continue to rise up that number of how many people can be in a team. Right now, it's at 5,000, and we'll continue to expand that. But I still believe that Yammer is the place for those communities of practice, those public support groups, and especially if you work in a very large organization, it's important to be able to have that. And of course, my email. In the center there, you'll see content collaboration with SharePoint and video and live events in Stream. This is by no means every single app that's inside of Office 365, but it's a little bit of the lay of the land. Now you're going to ask me, where are Office 365 groups? They're not on this slide. Groups are not an experience. And I'm going to apologize because I was one of the people who told you that they were. Before I was with Teams, when I was working on Yammer rollouts, I worked on the rollout of Office 365 groups. And we were like, these are so cool because they're available in Outlook and you get a calendar and a place for files and you should use these. And so that's what I said. And now, of course, I have to kind of roll that back a little bit, because Office 365 groups are really an infrastructure. They're a place where you manage membership, and it works all across Office 365. You can see them in Outlook, of course, but if you're going to go to the effort to figure out a launch plan, a real launch plan for your technology, then you want to be doing it where you're going to have the highest return on your investment, and that would be Teams or your modern internet with SharePoint or what have you. So you shouldn't think of groups as something that you want to teach your users how to use. Hopefully they don't think about it. Hopefully from an IT perspective, you're managing the creation of groups. You're doing lifecycle management, so they automatically expire or delete. And I have a whole webinar on that if you're interested. You do need to do governance around group creation, but they're not a thing. Right? So you won't hear Microsoft people talk about them like they are any longer.
You should see it. Karuana, question?
Yeah, sure.
No, so if you go back to the slide, so for those that don't have access to Yammer, like government agencies, for example, what would be your recommendation for an outer loop kind of best practice?
Oh, great question. So just for the recording, so for those who don't have access to Yammer, like GCC or government agencies, what would be a recommendation for that outer loop area? Well, depending upon how many people we're talking about, I would center that in Teams. But I do know that Yammer will be coming also to the government cloud. They are working on that now. Let me just debunk this right now. Yammer is not dead. Yammer is a vibrant engineering group in our organization, and I work with them every day. And we'll have lots of cool announcements at Ignite, which is coming in November, about the work that we're doing in Yammer. So, you know, if any of you have been working in that for a while, don't think it's going away. That's not what's happening. But yes, I would definitely center it in Teams at this point. If it's more than 5,000 people, then I would have to think about that for a minute. I might use some custom work in SharePoint to accomplish it. Yeah, that's a great question. So so the process is reinvesting in employee trust and satisfaction. How many of you actually do an employee survey about collaboration services or anything for that matter? A few people? Okay, great. There's this thing called forms in Office 365, and there are other ways to do this in a compliant way in a government tenant. It's very, very important to talk to the people you're trying to serve. You have to find out what they hate, what they like, what they need, and what they want. That's the only way to actually create satisfaction, is if you find out their state of being. And also this goes to good data processes. You need to baseline your data. How are you going to prove that you are having impact as you roll out parts of Office 365 if you don't have that data there to do a baseline against? Right? In Microsoft IT, we do a survey once a quarter. And they're called a pulse survey, and we send them to a subset of the organization. So we don't want to over survey people. People can get annoyed by that. So we pick a subset of the population and send this survey out on whatever key topic. It might be meeting room technology or file sharing, or it might be a different types of questions overall. And then of course, then we have an annual all up employee survey that covers leadership and morale and a bunch of other things. But I encourage you to think about how you might be getting information back from the people that you serve in your organization. Their voices will help you prioritize your backlog, because newsflash, there's more work here than any of us will get done in our lifetime. There is so much work to do in this space, if you think about it, because once you're successful, once people realize that you know how to wrest some value out of this technology, they're going to beat your door down with ideas and things that they want to do. And so you will have to prioritize the work that you do. And so a good way of doing that is making sure you have this baseline. And these pillars are the 3 areas that you can make a really good effort in that will have high returns. So collaboration, communication, and engagement, right? You want to create those frictionless experiences. You want transparent and timely communication with the right people at the right time. How many of you have ever been on that huge email thread that gets forked because somebody adds one more person and then somebody replies to that one and then they reply over here, and then you have no way to actually figure out what is going on? I know that there are still improvements we can do in the chat experience in Microsoft Teams, but at least it stops that, right? It stops that. And as we add private channels and things like channel guests and other things, it will help us to have conversations with the right people at the right time that are also discoverable, right? If I'm a new person on that team, I can come in, I can scroll back, I can see what's going on, and I have a better understanding of what's happening in the product. And then, of course, that engagement, right? Making sure that people can be engaged, but at the right time. Because you don't want people to feel like they're tied to their computer. That's one of the reasons why I asked if you had Teams on your mobile device, because the mobile experience of Microsoft Teams, I feel, is one of the better mobile applications that Microsoft has released, especially when it comes to chat. When I used to run Skype at Microsoft, my old boss would come into my office and he would say, okay, Karuana, where are my missing bag of chats? I know somebody IM'd me. I can't find it. Tell me where it is, right? Those are the questions you don't want to have to answer. And the fact that they were in the conversation history in the Outlook folder, like I knew the answer, that wasn't really what he wanted to hear. He didn't want to lose information or have that feeling like he was missing something. And so that chat experience, which has been completely rewritten in Microsoft Teams, really addresses that. People often ask me too, why didn't you just, quote unquote, fix Skype? Why did you create a new thing? And it's because we knew that the changes to the industry were going to come along, bringing things like document collaboration and chat and meetings together, right? And we wanted to use the power of Azure. So Microsoft Teams has been built on top of Azure from the ground up, and it gives us a brand new place to innovate without the technical debt of that legacy code that we have with Skype for Business, which of course we still support. Right. So if you're still on Skype for Business, that's perfectly fine. We hope you'll get to Teams soon because we want you to have a better meeting experience. It is measurably better in Microsoft Teams, something like 37% healthier data transfer. But at the same time, we want you to have a mindful transition so you get the most out of it. All right, that's great. Now what? Fantastic. We've got a vision. We have a little bit of a plan. We have some goals. Now what do? You talk to the people. This is what I like to call an abbreviated view of feedback from people at the water cooler. Now, there are many great companies and partners who will come into your organization and do great business process mapping. You know, they're very large engagements sometimes, and I'm not, criticizing that in any way. But for me, what I always found the most valuable was going into the lunchroom or to the water cooler or to the coffee pot and talking to people, or making a 30-minute meeting with the VP of operations and really asking him about his experience with the technology. And that served 2 goals. Number 1, I got to know that person human to human. right? It's really important to build trust in these relationships as you're taking people through change. And secondly, sometimes no one from IT had ever come and asked them, right? Sometimes as IT professionals, we talk a lot. And I would assert that we need to build our listening skills a little bit more. So go and find these folks because they will tell you, sometimes very, forcefully, what they need and what they want. And these are very common issues that I find around the world when I work with customers. Somebody who's out in the field, they have poor internet connectivity and they can't find what they need. So Microsoft Search hasn't been tuned. An executive assistant is trying to manage multiple calendars and they can't also find the right information. Making sure that they have timely awareness of customer issues for mitigation or difficulty communicating with all or some employees. These are super common issues. They can be solved pretty easily. But what happens when you write them down like this is you can say, all right, Bob, you told me that you didn't know those key issues that you needed to know. Here's what I've done in Teams. Here's the alerts that I've set up. Here's a little bit of custom development to make ServiceNow, maybe, for instance, connect to Microsoft Teams. And now you'll know when things are happening. And what you've done then is you build trust because you solved their problem, right? You can't build that trust in this scenario unless you have them articulate it to you in a fast and simple way. So again, this isn't a replacement for business process mapping or some of the other tools that we have available, for instance, in our Teams Adoption Hub or the other adoption hubs that I have. But it's a great way of being able to prioritize what you're going to fix. And a word for every executive assistant in every company everywhere: fix their problem. They run the universe, right? Executive assistants are some of the hardest working people I have ever known, and quite often IT and business consultants never talk to them. And that is a mistake, because what they like and don't like will color their executives' view of the universe. So make them your friends. They are absolutely responsible for a great deal of my success in this business, because I was once an EA long ago in a far distant universe, and I remember how difficult it was to keep everybody happy all the time, and how no one ever talked to me, because that's what the job I had when I was in school. Now, from an IT perspective, the other thing that you need to do is actually have a broader plan for your services. This is an example roadmap of something that we call the Connected Employee Experience. This is actually an example from Microsoft. And if you don't have something like this, or maybe you're not accountable for all of Office 365, that's fine. But maybe you do have accountability for a part of it, like Teams. What are the services you're going to offer to the people who are using your application? And for folks who may be working with a custom development team or certain partners, like, you have to roll up these technology implementations into something that matters for the business. So you can't use any feature words and you can't use any acronyms in a slide like this. This is an acronym-free zone, which is harder than you think, actually. But you'll see there at the top that, so this is an example of how Microsoft IT has evolved it since then, but how we used to organize our service profile, right? At the top there, finding, meetings and voice, collaborating, communicating, supporting, and employee engagement. And what's down at the bottom are the projects that we're going to support the delivery of those core capabilities. So we had our Teams implementation, we did connected hubs, we modernized our intranet, we had executive engagement events using live events. At the time it was Skype for Skype meeting broadcast, and now we use live events for this inside of Microsoft, right? To increase that employee engagement with folks. Standing up knowledge bases, using SharePoint for that, and other improvements there. All of these are a combination of Office 365 services, but they are packaged in a way that an executive can read. Any human can read this if they take a little bit of time and understand what it means. That's the kind of communication skills you need in this modern IT world. And it's kind of difficult because we both have to have technical acumen, like we have to have deep knowledge of the technology, but at some level, and especially if you're a manager, you're accountable for this rollout, you have to be able to communicate it in ways that, again, don't involve acronyms. Because the minute you start, flying acronyms out, then, people kind of start to glaze over a little bit, and you never want that. The last piece of this, I'm going to hop into demo here in a minute, but I do want to talk a little bit about adoption outcomes. So this was when I first started doing this work for teams and having to stand up all these new processes for this new product at Microsoft, one of the things I realized very quickly was that nobody was agreeing on what success looked like. And as a PM for my entire life, I know that you have to define that first before you get too far down the road. And so we took some time to think about what are the quadrants of success? What kinds of success can you drive with a rollout of Microsoft 365 and Office 365 tools in particular? And so we came up with this. Now, I'm not suggesting this is the be-all, end-all, but it's one way of framing what success outcomes might look like. And it's included in, for any of you who know about this, there's a service adoption specialist course that you can take online. I happen to be the author of it. I'll get you your Microsoft certification, and this is one of the modules in it. And so there are organizational, cultural, tangible, and individual benefits. And the question is, how fast do you want to change? You have to move at the speed that your organization can withstand. Right? Every organization has a different appetite for change. And sometimes the organization, one group will have a higher, sorry, hang on one second. Here we go. Sometimes a group inside of your organization will have a greater appetite for change than, and I'm having mic problems, aren't I? Yes. Sounds like it's going on and off. Okay, let's see if we can make that work. All right, I'll stand like really still. That's not my way, but okay, I'll turn at the waist. There you go. Sometimes one group inside your company will have a greater appetite for change than another, depending upon how much external pressure they may be under or what have you. So you have to think about that as well. Here are some examples of the outcomes for each of these pillar areas. And again, you could argue with me about the words at the top of the slide here, but the key is to think about this in business terms. And you can use, in the course where I show you how you can use the telemetry that's available in your Office 365 tenant to tie the usage of the products to these different types of outcomes. And as we run up to Ignite, you're going to see us come out with more quantification of these outcomes built into the Office 365 tenant. How many of you know about the secure score? Anybody know about that? Okay, good. So think about something like a secure score for productivity. And a secure score is a way of making sure you go through and do the things you need to do to secure your Office 365 tenant based on your own policies. So think about that and how that might extrapolate into the productivity space. But you'll hear more about that at Ignite. And is anybody going? Who's going to Ignite? Woohoo! Okay, I'm gonna be there. It's gonna be a party. It's gonna be really fun. We'll have Office Takeover Day. There's lots of great events that are going on. But if you don't happen to be going, you can also see everything online, right? A lot of the content is streamed before, during, or after the conference. So you'll be able to get that information in the tech community, by the way. But in these areas, so again, this is going to which of these items in each of these columns is important to your particular organization? Do you need to do cultural transformation? Is that a stated goal, right? An email just came out from Satya just a couple days ago about the fact that we're continuing to drill through into making our cultural values the actual lived experience of our employees, because there's a gap in terms of what we say we're trying to do and what people are experiencing. So we have to hone in on that. Employee retention is definitely something for our company. We want people to stay, and of course it's very competitive in technology, so acquiring talent is another thing. As you move forward, as you move over to the other side of the slide, over into tangible and individual, this goes to the measures I was talking about, right? How are you going to measure cost savings in your customer service process? Or if you have incident tickets, right? It's usually time to resolution, TTR. Sorry, used an acronym, but that's what it is. And that time to resolution is something you can measure, right? Back when I started in SharePoint, what was that, like 15 years ago, something? I don't know, long time. One of the first projects I did was actually a digital form right? It was a form. We used InfoPath at that time. We put it in SharePoint. It got approved, and it was for, I worked at Skechers at that time, and it was for the refund to our wholesalers for product that they were returning. And as it turned out, that had been a paper form, and it ended up in trash cans. It ended up lost on people's desks. It was just kind of a messy process. Well, once I digitized it, we could issue those refunds in like 3 days. And my CFO came to me and said, "You gotta slow this down. This is happening way too fast. We're giving this money back like hotcakes, right? What are you doing?" But at least now we knew the difference, right? We had a baseline. We knew that nobody could find that form before. So it was kind of into infinity, right? And then once we put any digital form, we could do it in 72 hours. And then we just tuned it to do it in like 7 days. There was a business reason for doing that, to manage the cash flow. Those are the kinds of tangible, measurable improvements that you can do with Office 365. And then you can come into the individual area where actually, again, you're realizing that investment in the employee, you're helping them be productive, they feel more engaged. And when they answer your survey, you start to tick up, right? Would they recommend your services, your collaboration services to another employee? You want them to say yes, right? Or on the 5-star ranking, you want to get a 5 on that. All right, so I have a few minutes now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hop over, and I will make sure that everybody gets a copy of this deck after the fact. We've got some other slides in here that basically are the overview slides for Microsoft Teams, you know, talking about what it provides. Many of you obviously already know that, and highlighting Stream and SharePoint as well, and the capabilities there. But I'm going to hop out of this. And I'm going to go over here, and let me get this onto the screen. Okay. So what I'm looking at right now is the web version of Microsoft Teams. There's a solution that we have out there. It's called Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. I'm going to stand still. You have to apologize because I'm going to tweak with the speakers if I don't stand still. Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways is a free solution that installs in your SharePoint tenant that gives you access to all of the Microsoft training materials for any product. And what I've done is I've embedded that here inside Microsoft Teams by the use of a cute little app that is free that we're giving away in our GitHub area. And it's basically a way of embedding links here as tabs. But here's one of the things that I wanted to create this. I'm on the team that created this. It brought together a bunch of different people across SharePoint and our content managers. There's 3 of us. And I wanted to create this originally because I remember what it was like to be a customer of Microsoft and trying to find all of the content that we would put out and trying to stay up to date with all that content was frankly maddening. And it was very difficult. And so being able to have this and also customize it, I can include other sites from within my tenant in this application. It's a very, very simple thing to do. But this is one of the examples of how doing a little bit of custom development, and I call this a low-code, almost no-code solution. And what's great about it is, hey, if I want to hop out and have the full SharePoint experience, I can do that, right? But this is an example of what it's like to bring together the capabilities of Teams, of SharePoint and Office 365 into Teams, right? Yes, question?
So I've deployed this.
Oh, cool.
Does it get automatically updated, or would I have to go redeploy?
Yes, the content, so the question is, someone's deployed this learning pathway solution and they wanted to know, does it automatically get updated? The answer is the content is automatically streamed and updated. The web part, when we do main updates on the web part itself, like I'm actually running the newest version, the web part you have to update yourself in your tenant, right? And there's and also we will be launching our timeline, our official timeline for the multilingual version of this experience at Ignite. So if you have to support regions with different languages and your SharePoint implementation is in another language, you'll be able to have learning pathways there as well. And so, but this is just one way of driving engagement with your employees, because the thing is, you want to minimize context switching whenever possible. So context switching is when, like I used to have I don't know, 20 browser windows open to do my job, like just a lot, right? And the problem is, as you switch between them, every time you switch between them, you actually break your brain's ability to focus, right? You want to be able to get into what's called a deep focus state, a deep state. And that deep state, every time you have to switch, is broken, and it takes at least 15 minutes to begin to restore it. So what we want to do in Microsoft Teams is try to bring things into one location. So yes, I am switching between different views, but I'm essentially in one application. And I can see that here as well inside of Teams, right? And so one of the things that I always tell folks to do is to make sure that they have deployed the right number of tabs. If you're not using tabs in Teams, or if you haven't hit this little plus sign to see the different apps that are available to you, then you are missing out in what is really the most important part of Microsoft Teams. I have a lot of customers who are using it for chat and meetings, and that's great, and we appreciate that. But if you want to do what I've been talking about, invest in your employees, improve their experience, and get real business value, you need to be thinking about how to integrate the other components of Office 365 and the other apps that are available. Also, of course, Teams is a platform, right? Teams is a platform, and just like I showed the Get Started app, you can do your own app integrations. And if you've already invested in, for instance, SharePoint Framework applications, it's a couple of lines of code to light them up inside of Microsoft Teams. You don't have to rewrite them. There's no big heavy migration process for the most part. You might want to think about the way the application works, since you have access to chat, and it might need to work a little bit differently as it's iframed inside of Teams. But you can most definitely do great development work and bring things like your service desk in, or other business processes. Even if all you do is bring in the time off request in your company, right? Move that from wherever it is, and even if you're just using the website tab here to pin any secure URL, bring that into your Teams experience. Now here, this is a team I have for my Teamwork Champions, which I hope all of you have a Champions program. Champions are the secret sauce to your deployment and adoption plan, because someone is always going to ask Sarah that sits next to them a question before they come and ask a help desk or IT or someone like me or a partner who may be providing support. So you want to have those champions be early adopters of all the technology, invest in them, train them. This is why I run the Worldwide Office 365 Champions program. They are the magic. And every tenant that I have that has a Champions program live within it has much higher adoption of all Office 365 technologies than those who do not. Right? And they also have less incidents of help desk tickets, less incidents of true support tickets. The support tickets that come through are more focused on actual bugs or issues in the area, as opposed to how do I do such and such. So where do I have a home for those folks? I have a home for those folks inside their tenant in a Teamwork Champions team. And I share with them things like our snazzy Microsoft Teams adoption guide, which is of course available online. We have a Microsoft 365 adoption guide, and you can see this is a PDF that I have pinned here inside of Teams. This doesn't take a lot of time to do this. All I'm doing here is putting a URL into this website app and pinning it as a tab within the application. But then people don't have to go hunt for it, right? Then the conversation you'll have is, they'll say, where's such and such? And you'll say, oh, it's a tab in Teams. I find myself saying that a lot because they're used to having to hunt for stuff. People are used to not finding what they need. And you're going to have to help them realize that it's all available here. Of course, OneNote is another important thing to have built in. And most of the materials that I publish can be found on this adoption hub. And it is aka.ms Microsoft Adoption. I'll give everybody the URL. It's actually in my deck. But what I'm trying to do is bring together all of these adoption resources that have been strewn far and wide across the Microsoft ecosystem into one cohesive experience. And I'll be launching a major update to this page and this site experience at Ignite to help you find the information you need more by phase of what you're doing instead of product. Right? One of the things that Microsoft is that we're continuing to evolve as well. We're so product centric sometimes, but now we need to be more focused on the phase that you happen to be in. Are you getting started? Are you trying to get more value out of something? Where are you? And so we'll be doing that as we continue to evolve this. But you can see here, we've got our main adoption guide. We have information for search and a new section that we just launched, teamwork governance. The governance topic is extremely important when you're thinking about Microsoft 365 and especially Microsoft Teams, because how many of you know that phrase SharePoint sprawl? Y'all heard that before, right? Okay. Yes, there is such a thing as team sprawl. It's not pretty. And so what you need to do is you need to be thinking about what we like to call life cycle management. And in this area here under teamwork governance, we have the process and the resources that will help you, especially when you come down here, plan for governance in Microsoft Teams, plan for lifecycle management in Teams. These how-to guides right here are very important because what you're actually doing is you're applying lifecycle management in Office 365 to the creation of Office 365 groups. And you can have them automatically expire and you can do reporting on them. Now, some of those capabilities do require an extra license, Azure Premium, Azure AAD Premium subscription for some of the lifecycle management services. But there are other basic things you can do with just a standard, E5 or E3 license or what have you. But it's definitely something you want to be thinking about. To have a great experience, you need to have governance for Office 365 group creation. You might want to do some naming conventions, right? And I highly encourage you to do some labeling because governance is not a broad brush, right? You need to have different levels of governance for different types of teams. As an IT professional, you do not want to be in the way of the person who just needs a team to collaborate with 4 or 5 people to get something done. You want them to be able to create that team on the fly so they get that frictionless experience. However, and that would be a general team. However, if they classify something as high confidentiality, like we do at Microsoft, those teams, they can create, but they have different policies applied to them. For instance, I can't invite an external guest into a Microsoft team that has been classified as highly confidential, right? That is only for Microsoft employees. So those are the types of things that you can do when you think governance through, and then you're automating your governance rather than the command and control module, right? Because a lot of us in IT are used to controlling things and approving things, and I'm a recovering control freak. I don't know if my husband would agree that I'm recovering, but I think I am. But certainly when it comes to the way I approach my IT systems, I am, because I'm big into automation and alerting and holding my employees accountable, right, for the work that they do. I'm going to go out on a limb here too, and I want to see if I built in here. Let's see. Yeah, so I do have. I was going to take a look and see if I had one of our stream channels built in here. But this is another fantastic use for streams. So I can build in any of these modern SharePoint sites directly into Teams, but I can also drop in a stream channel. So one of the things that I have folks do is record some very simple presentation videos, put them on stream in your environment, and require your employees to take those courses. Right, and it could just be a 30-minute presentation on data security in your company. And there's a little form attestation where you can say, yes, I read this. Because security is everyone's responsibility, not just people in IT. We have to build systems that are secure using products that are smart, but every employee is accountable for making sure that data stays where it needs to stay. But it doesn't have to be a horrible process, right? You can easily record right from inside of PowerPoint a presentation, drop it on a stream channel, attach it to a forum, and poof, all of a sudden you've got an online course, right, that your employees can take. And if you combine that with some smart policies in Office 365, you really have that ability to, again, transform the experience. So you can also see here, one other quick thing I wanted to call out, but as you look over here on the left, there's a lot of conversation about how to set up teams, right? Just like we had conversation in SharePoint, right? I encourage you to I like to call it's almost like domain squatting. If you are rolling out Microsoft Teams, save the names of those primary teams that are what I call authoritative teams. You only want one HR department in your organization, one sales department, what have you. You can save those names, provision that Office 365 group, and save that name until that group is ready to onboard, right? You can use things like name checking in the provisioning process and make sure you don't get more. But bigger teams are better. Bigger teams are better. The difficulty in teams and the user frustration comes when you're a member of too many teams, or there are duplicative teams for the same thing. What I find is people have a very difficult time really clicking up, thinking about their work differently. Right? My team has 800 people in it because when I started it, I didn't call it Caruana's team or Teams Adoption like I could have. I called it Office 365 Service Support and Readiness. And I named it that way, a click up at the Office 365 level instead of just for Teams, because I knew what I wanted to do in the long term. I wanted to serve as this house for all of teamwork. Right. And so now I have a center of gravity where all these people can work instead of being in 22 different teams. So anytime you can click up and have a bigger team and use channels for individual projects or parts of individual projects, I highly encourage that. Do I have my own teams up? Yes, I do. Hang on a second here. Oh, no, I don't. Yes, I do. Let's see if I can do this really quick. Another thing to do is to think about, yes, I'm going to actually briefly show you all something here. Another thing to think about is things like if you do anything like event management, inside Microsoft, I have a team called the Microsoft Teams Event Hub. It's where we manage all of the 70 events that we attend every year. And by having this thing called the Event Hub, I can use it year over year. So please help your users resist doing things like, Caruana's project for 2019. Like, don't put dates in the names of your team, really, if you can avoid it. And maybe it's relevant for you, but for the most part, it's better to think year over year. Have a team that has a longer lifespan, right? And then you can retire channels inside the team rather than having to spin up a new team every year for the same type of project. Right. Now, I have a video on this out on Coffee in the Cloud that you can review. About to update that video because we are releasing private channels. So private channels gives you the ability to have a channel in here that only a subset of the team members can access. Y'all have been waiting for that for a long time. Yay, I see. Thank you. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for waiting. We really wanted to get it right. We needed to make sure performance was correct, and we needed to make sure it had the right boundaries and everything worked. So it is coming for you. And that way you don't have to have a team for the HR department and a team for HR leadership, right? You can have those two things together and it will help you with that team sprawl. So as you think about these things, just remember that it's the people that are at the end of this, right? Now let me go back here really quickly. There's, in the courseware that I was talking about, becoming a service adoption specialist, there are 6 skill areas that you have to build to be good at driving service adoption. And I want to flash this slide really quickly because this is a challenge for all of us in IT or in this business right now. If you want to be good at just one thing, maybe what you want to do is be a technical expert in voice or a technical expert in collaboration. That's important. But if you want to drive adoption, you're going to need more than that. You're going to need to understand the organizational component of driving change that I alluded to. You have to have that business acumen and make sure that your folks are really getting business value out of the work. And you can see the stuff here. When I first launched this slide, when I first started writing this course, there was no course that existed that put a technical competence and marketing communications on the same slide. Nobody done that. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, think about it. If I can't communicate and launch the technology that I've been building in a way that's engaging and gets my users interested, I'm never going to drive any value, right? And that's why we have things like the customer success kit. And we're building other success kits for all of the rest of the Office 365 components, which you'll find on that main adoption hub, right? And also, each one of you are agents of change. This work requires the ability to be a leader, right? Take yourself seriously, not too seriously, right? I'm not saying be stuffy, but I'm saying that, what you do here matters. It really matters. And if you're not having fun in this business, if you don't feel like you're doing meaningful work, then think about that. This is an opportunity for you to transform your career. I am the poster child for taking community and technology that I love and my ability to work with people and turning it into an awesome job that I love and would do for free, right? And you can have that kind of enjoyment. It's available to you. It's just about going on the journey, right? Find your tribe. Join the champions community. Find the tribe of people like you're with right here today. Learn how to tell these stories, whether it's about teams with our assets or about another part of Office 365, and get certified. Take that course, validate your skills, put it on your LinkedIn profile, right? If this is the path you want to go down, but pick a path, right? Pick a path and commit to it. One that is going to bring you meaning and provide for your long-term, capabilities in this business. I feel very comfortable that I'm not going to have to look for a job anytime soon, right? I feel like I have that together, and it's because of the investment I made in mastering the technology, but also a much bigger picture, so that I could not just be an implementer, but somebody who could lead change, because I like people too. I really enjoy people. So remember that that's what it's all about. Successful adoption and doing good stuff in Microsoft Teams or any part of Office 365 is about the people that we are serving. And it is my privilege and my pleasure to serve all of you. Thank you for letting me come and talk with you today.